know that. That's what allows them to land gently. And obviously on the valley plane, they need to know what's likely to happen. Subsidence is one of the unique perils. You can turn up at someone's door and tell them they haven't got it, and guess what? They're overdoing it. If you try and do that on a fire, and a flood damage or a theft, then it's not really great. But on the subsidence, actually it's a good thing a lot of the time. So we don't have a lot of issues around the majority of the subs claims, which are not covered. Yeah. So definition of subsidence very quickly. We say downward movement of the site on which the building stands. When the site moves down, masonry, the structure drops down after it. And you end up with a rotational movement and a wider crack at the top and at the bottom. And a textbook crack I found. Very late to you, but there you go. Rotational. Can you see that brick there? It's just proud of that brick there because it's rotated out. And the ground here has shrunk. It's not connected with because the building's got heavier. It's dropped because the soil conditions have changed. Right? So bear that one in mind. I'm going to come back to that. Heave, just to cover that off, even though it's about 2 or 3% of the claims. Heave is, believe it or not, upward movement to the side. So expansion. And the only thing that expands is clay. No other soil expands, okay? So the soil like clay is going to expand. It's because something's been taken away. It's usually trees. Trees take water from the clay. As soon as you take a tree out, the water is retained in the clay and the clay starts to swell. And heave damage looks remarkably like subsidence, you might say. People say sometimes it's wide at the bottom, narrow at the top, not all the way. And my guys, when they look at this, they'll say, oh, not sure, could be, could not be. They won't put the flag on it and say it's C. They'll come back to the office, they'll make some inquiries, probably look at some aerial photos, some historical photos, do some research and development, and then they'll say, I think it's C. Much more harder to call, by the way, okay? Clay shrinkage. So this is, any questions? Any questions? Fire them away, okay? I'll prefer that. So this is clay shrinkage. It's basically water taken from the clay, and the moisture content drops. And then you end up with what they call a desiccated clay. Have you heard that term before? Yeah? And you end up with a stiff, hard, fissured clay. Ooh. And it's really, really hard. If you get desiccated clay, here's a lump of desiccated clay. That's about 1,200 kilopascals. It's like concrete. And if you pour water on that, it will not absorb. So fast rainfall, even like 3 or 4 hours of rainfall, will not rehydrate that clay. It will run off. You need persistent long-term rain to rehydrate clay. Okay? Cuboidal cracking, they describe it as. Okay? And they call it clay glacial deposits. So have any of you done geography in your past life? So we talk about clay as a glacial deposit because when a clay is pushed onto material, it's usually what they call plucked. So from 15,000 years to 25,000 years ago, right now would be about 1.5 miles of a glacier. And in the Ice Age, this glacier would push all the rocks at the bottom of the glacier, and it's called plucking. And that plucking is grinding over thousands of years, and the grinding of the rocks turn to powder, and that powder is your clay sample there, wherever it is. Okay? So that's what we call it glacial clay deposits. All right? And typically we might get something like this. So we have a house in North London. You can see the crack here, you can see the crack there, and the customer will complain that the windows just bind inside the casement. And you've got a tree there. And on the side of the house, you've got a crack along the DPC, which ordinarily you'd say, what's the problem? Just a crack on the DPC. And as the weather gets worse and drier, the cracks open up. Yeah? So the same cracks have opened up. And if you imagine, people say, well, the window is binding further. Can you see why? If that wall has dropped, these cracks would open, and then the aperture would go out of square, wouldn't it? Very slow. So windows and doors binding. That's usually the point of discovery on subsidence. And inside, if you imagine that flank wall, we're going to go up the stairs. Inside the house, the flank wall has dropped, and you've got a crack like that. And on this one here, the customer has actually put in some polyurethane foam. Have you come across material like that? It's called gap filler. You usually get from the DIY. Good thing or a bad thing? Good thing or a bad thing? Putting that in. Yeah, so it's a good thing or a bad thing? Because the customer are really good about this or not? Obviously it's a bad thing because clay shrinks, the clay swells. It will swell. But if that clay swells and pushes that plank wall up, that ain't going to hurt. took it out and you put in a flexible white plastic. Okay? You have to do something for the customer because you can imagine in the background, while we might be investigating this for several months, the wife will be coming down the stairs every morning and probably having a go at the husband saying, that crack, every morning I see it, what's happening, what's the adjuster doing, what's the broker doing. So we do end up doing some temporary works to allow them to live so they don't see the crack, while we, in the background, have a good fight with the council on the tree. Because the tree may be so big, but after, in full grown, it's taking water from the ground. Okay? And this is a scenario. The tree has root systems, the root system, tree roots, it's a fibrous root, it's not a big one, people say, oh, so a huge root. No, it's the fibrous roots that take water. And what the fibrous roots do is they take enough water to provide sustenance for the leaf area. So if you can create a deciduous function in the tree, i.e. you go and cut every leaf off that tree, it will stop taking water pretty much straight away. But obviously people don't do that. They wait for autumn or they do a trimming when they can. So the water is taken from the ground and foundation strong. Okay? So that's clay shrinkage in a real sort of common sense way. This is what we got here. So I've said subsidence down to clay shrinkage is 60% of the claims, and drains is about 35%. Before I sort of go further, I was going to talk a bit about some of these other causes of subsidence as well, okay? Some of the more dramatic ones, because I think they're the ones that people will phone you about as well, yeah? So I've got here, first of all, peat. Any of you live in the Fens, Norwich, Cambridge, Peterborough, and even out to Suffolk? Okay, if you go out there, if you ever drive out there, very flat, but quite bumpy, and that's because a lot of it's on peat. Does anyone know peat is? Apart from the stuff you get from the DIY store, from the B&Q? Yeah, exactly. It's not so much fossilized, but it is ancient, not quite to a fossilized state. It's actually decomposing vegetative material. Ancient forests and woods, fallen, compacted, then it's got clay on top, because obviously you've had the glaciers, haven't you? But underneath this is decomposing material. Because before the glacier came along, it took all the trees out there. And that material is black, organic, pungent, smelly, moist. And if you get a thin band of it, fine, and it will just compress. It's like squidgy. It will compress and the moisture just pushes out. That's fine, and you get a little bit of subsidence. But we've had situations where we've got 6 meters of peat. So you know this thing's going to carry on for a long time. And where you have that, there's no reverse in the movement, unlike clay. There's nothing you could do to mitigate, like take a tree out. So you're probably in for a bit more trouble there. So peat, if you do have it, depending upon the banding and how much compression it's gone through, could be a problem.
So it's not across the whole country. So
No. Particularly, yeah, East Anglia is one area. There are other pockets of peat around, but East Anglia, Suffolk, I would say out even to the Cambridgeshire area, there's a peat. Solution features. Have you heard of this before? It's been in the press over the last year or two. Become quite topical. I think Horizon had a program on it only a couple of days ago, maybe a few days ago, in Florida. Do we know what solution features are? Yeah. Okay. We call them sinkholes. Bit of a myth, really. Most of them are crown holes. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the 4 types. There are actually 8 types of sinkholes, but I'm going to talk about the 4. Okay. And I'll just put that up, and I'll put this up. So the first type of sinkhole is where you get a lake, and it creates a depression, and then the water drains from the lake, and you're left with a hole. Fine. So no one's going to build on there, I hope. It's a lake. The second one is where you've got a covered sinkhole, and you've got sediments that actually just break down into this ancient working, or old workings. It could be fractured pipes and the like. And when that happens, the top layer then just drops down. Okay? The third one is what they call a dry sinkhole. So it might be into an old sinkhole, and it just drops in. I'm going to go race this one here, because this is the one that we see a lot of. It's what they call a cover collapse. And what you've got that clay, if you remember, we've got a lot of clay. Clay tends to stick and hold, while subterranean cavity opens up. So you end up with a hole, and then eventually one day the clay collapses in, and anything on top of the clay is going to follow. Yeah? So you can get quite dramatic ones. This is one about 300 meters deep. It's quite funny actually. You can see this chap here is lying down, taking a photo looking down at it. There was a property on the corner here. This is in South America, in Guatemala. You can see the cordon off there. And this is again a subterranean cavity. In geological times, it's opened up over a long period. And as it opens up, the cavity grows and grows, and then one day, snap, it collapses. Florida is on limestone, which is soft material, soft and dissolvable material. So geologically speaking, Florida will not exist. It is going, just the rate at which it goes. Isle of Wight won't exist, yeah, because it's all limestone. Limestone will go. In the UK, we get things like this, so less dramatic. So this one's opened up. Sinkhole here, house there. What's the cover? What sort of cover does he get? None. No subsidence, landslip of the house. Subsidence of paving, it's not covered, is it? So we sometimes encourage insurers to allow us to explore it and fill it before the hole gets bigger and then the house does go. Yeah? So it's just common sense. Here's another one. This one's awfully close to the house and a big deal bigger. And we have a problem with that one because we had two insurers and one was interested and the other one wasn't, and the hole was in the middle. But again, the problem is the sinkhole starts to collapse. And it's quite live in that sense. This one here is in Reading area. And Reading is, again, in chalk, if you know the area. We had a sinkhole just over there. This was late last year. And so I call this a crown hole because it's a working. People, ancient working from a couple hundred years ago, extracting material, and then they finish off extracting, and they keep the shoring in it, and then they just cover it up. Obviously, hundreds of years later, people are developing properties. So that one there has collapsed. Well, it's not covered under the policy because there's no damage to house. It's just by the beginning of this driveway. The second one then collapsed. For that one, we told the insurer, well, actually, he's got a drain there now, so can we cover it under accidental damage to drainage or drainage claim? Yes, they did. And we obviously put this thing's called foam concrete. It's like an aerated concrete mix. So what we do is we do some probing to work out the size, the extremity, and the profile of the sinkhole, and then we fill it with foam concrete. Right? So once we fill it in, it's stable. But this photo was taken from Mr. Jenkins' bedroom. So you can see this working. When we looked at the range map, we could find out that the workings, actually, the next one was going to appear under his house. And this is a conversation I had with him just before Christmas, unfortunately, which is always great. So sign up for Christmas, you're thinking, this guy's going to phone me up, I can see it. But it's a case of the house is moving or it's not moving. So we're doing more probing now to work out if there are any other sinkholes about to open. We can grout it now before we end up with the houses gone. Yeah. But under the policy, sinkholes is covered under subsidence, and it's subsidence of the house in which the building stands, the downward move to the house. Otherwise, it's not covered, and you have to find a different way of covering it if you can, because you just don't want to leave the customer in that sort of a state. So I'm going to give you some reasons why subsidence doesn't happen in the policy, okay? But they got damaged. These are some of the top 8 I think I've got there. This is about 98% of all of the non-mallet claims. Settlements, with differentiation between settlements and subsidence. Thermal, watertight, abscess, restraint, lintel, roof, sulfate attack, they were the replacements. I'm going to cover pretty much all of them, maybe not one, but there's good reason why. There are more, but that's probably good to go through, yeah? So what is settlement? Does anyone have a go at me? If I said subsidence is damage of the building, which, the damage of the site, which the building stands, what's settlement then?
Is that the weight of it?
Yeah, that was a little bit I put in there, didn't I? Because I said unconnected with the weight of the building on subsidence. This has got absolutely everything to do with the weight of the building. So, when does settlement occur? Exactly. No. It can occur on very old buildings too. Yeah. So when you look at Pisa, the mayor of Pisa said in the 12th century, I want to build something that's going to put this town on the map. And he did that, didn't he? But he only managed to build that for a few years before. Pisa's actually been vertical twice in its life. Did you know that? So the first time was, well, I'll tell you the first time. It went to the south as it started to sink into the ground, and it's the weight of the building that started the rotation of Pisa. Because it's rotation, they stopped. The mayor died, the engineer died, the next mayor died, the next mayor died after that, and the fourth mayor on the trot went back to this project and said, do you know what, with the engineer, we are going to extend the columns on the south and shorten them on the north, and then we'll change the pilasters. And sure enough, Pisa swung centre. That's one type of centre. Then it swung north. Went too far. So they stopped again, and another 35 years later, they started up again. And this time, guess what? They lengthened the columns on the north and shortened them on the south. Pisa was centre again, brilliant. And then it finished up on the south. So in the end, they put a bell bigger than the one they originally designed, and they put that bell off centre. So the centre of mass of that building isn't what you think it is, and that building is not vertical. It's actually doing this, okay? And that's why Pisa, partly that, and lots of other ground stability things they've done on the site have kept it in place. But he's got what he wanted, isn't he? He's got Pisa on the map. Yeah. They're probably the most famous defective building in history, I would say. But it is the weight of the building. So you're right, it is new build, predominantly, but all where they've changed loadings in the building. Lock conversions, could be putting in lintels which are undersized, or pads which aren't in the right place, or haven't got the right kind of material. If you change the load distribution in the building, you often point loads in areas which may not be designed for point loads. Then you may have downside. Okay? Thermal movements. If I said to you all materials expand and contract, some more than others. If they expand and contract more than they're designed to, they crack. It's natural, it's fine, and it's designed as well in a lot of cases. So you get a design movement. Here's one, typically, that's usually vertical. It's even in height. You can see it's not rotational. And this one is at a corner of a building where two lengths of wall might expand, and it pushes the corner out, which is what's done there. And this one here is actually fire damage. So can you see the smoke there? This is actually a fire claim. But I was interested in it because although it's a fire claim, the temperatures internally were quite significant. Externally, you just spotted that this wall had expanded there and cracked along an internal crosswalk where it had been peat. It's thermal cracking, nothing to do with foundations. That would be covered under fire, obviously. That's not covered. Any thermal cracking, you can imagine plaster cracking, masonry cracking, concrete cracking, not covered. Do we know what a wall tie is? Yeah? So, wall ties only came to life since we started building cavity wall construction. So mostly in the last century. Yeah? And cavity wall construction is good because it's cheaper than a solid masonry construction, introduces a bit of thermal performance to it, sound performance, breaks the outer wall to the inner wall, stops moisture transmitting. And if you're using nice fancy brickwork, you only have to use it on the facing brick. And on the inner face, you can use cheaper block work, which is better performing. But if you've got two walls, you need to join them together. You need to have a wall tie to do that. So this is us looking at a cavity to inspect the wall tie. And these are wall ties that have broken. Do you know what they have a twist? Or some sort of a device in the middle of a wall tie? Every wall tie will have that. Something in the middle. So this part of the wall tie will be the outer brick or the inner brick, and this will be the other section. Why have they got something going on there? Thermal expansion. No. So if this was the outer wall, and this went down from water wanted to travel in, what's going to stop it from getting all the way to the wall? A drip. So this creates a little drip, and the water goes down to the cavity and back out again. But the water gets through. If the galvanizer is not great, it's going to corrode. And here is an example of outer wall, unfortunately landing on a neighbour's car. Now called a skid. That's more dramatic, but if I said to you the beginnings of wall tie failure, you need to look for horizontal dotted line cracks. And if you looked at the flank wall, you'd see some undulation, both along its line and vertically and horizontally. And there's your beginning of a failure. All right? Nowadays, the galvanizer is much more superior on wall ties, so it doesn't seem to happen as often. But if you've got exposed positions, you've got poor mortar, you've got water getting through, then you've got a problem beginning to happen. But again, not covered, not under any concept. Yeah? And the only time actually we do look at that, so you'll probably, if it's not covered, so while we're looking at the cavity there, we do some warranty work for NHBC. And NHBC under the 10-year warranty will cover it. So for them, we do it to drill a hole, look down, and say, yep, it's definitely wall tie failure, and we have to repair it. But that's a 10-year warranty as opposed to a building's insurance, yeah? Lack of lateral restraint, and that's pretty much as it says on the tin. Over there you've got a semi-detached. Can you see the wall is just bowing on section? And on plan it's bowing as well. And that is what it is. All walls on a building want to move out. They never want to move in, because inside you've got might put openings in which make the wall weaker. The wall might be exposed. Again, there's mortar. You might have a wall loading eccentrically, not vertically, but at an angle in various ways. There's a butterfly roof there, there's a normal pitch roof here. That's going to put extra diagonal pressure on that wall. And that's the sort of thing you get. So on a Victorian building, you would get this sort of cracking, typically, and you'd see the wall bow right from up there. And this is an example of me going to see a house which has got a hairline crack, and I was a bit interested because I thought this wall had fallen out, but there's no evidence of it. Now when I move this cabinet out, can you see what I see? Well, there's the skirting, and there's the wall, and here's the floorboard. That floorboard used to be there, or that skirting. That whole wall used to be there. If that wall's there, what's happened here? Someone's pieced in a bit of skirting. Can you see it? About an inch of it, by the way. So it's moved by 1 inch out, and the customer's put that in, and he wouldn't tell me anymore. And I said, well, you don't have to tell me because it's not covered, but I might have some good news for you. And eventually he opened up and said, well, actually, I think it was about 15, 18 years ago, the work was done, and some people did some metal, we call it metal strapping, and it was pretty much right, but it was secret strapping, so you couldn't see it. And so the good news is, for 18 years, that thing hasn't moved. I mean, that's just a hairline, that's just a skirting. That hasn't moved one bit. So as far as I'm concerned, he has a lot of movement, but it wouldn't have been covered if he did. Yeah? Lintel failure. That's it, really. Textbook. Never happens quite like that. Do you know a lintel's a really fascinating piece of material, actually, because it's what does a lintel do? Sounds bizarre. It's a really, really basic question. What does a lintel do? Stops it, yeah. I prefer it diverts the load of that wall around the window. It spreads the load. The lintel. That's what it does, yeah. So that's fine. It stops it from falling. It's great. So can you see, if that was a piece of rubber, if I had a piece of rubber that long and I actually bent it like this, like that, the top of the rubber would be crinkling, wouldn't it? It would be in compression, yeah? What would the bottom of the rubber be doing? Perfect. Splitting. It's in tension. Isn't it amazing that one piece of material is in compression and tension really in close proximity? So that property has, that material has the property of resisting both. Concrete is good in what? Compression or tension, you think? What would you think? Compression, yeah. You squash concrete, it ain't going anywhere. But funny enough, if you try and tear concrete apart, it does break. Yeah? Rubbish in tension. Great compression. So concrete lintels performing fantastically there, but at the bottom in tension, oh my god, they're in trouble. So lintels have a design where at the bottom they put a reinforcing bar, like that, or they put extra strengthening, or a nib, or a lip, or extension, or make it a bit more robust at the bottom, because that's the tension that needs to work a different way. And if you do that, it works well. If your reinforcing bar is weak, corroded, in the wrong place, or if a builder's put the lintel the wrong way round, which we've seen, then guess what? That reinforcing bar's at the top, and it's not doing the right thing, is it? And you end up with a classic bow, not obviously quite like that. And here's a scenario we might get, you see. So lintel failure is not uncommon, it does happen, but you get lintel deflection rather than what they call catastrophic failure. And you might get a subsidence claim where you get a drain and you get some step cracking here, which is like the cracking I showed you. And in the schedule you'll say, we've got this cracking damage and we're going to repair this. And then we may have in the schedule no damage repairs here. And your customer will call you up and say, why has he not included all the repairs? Because I've got other cracks here. They all appear at the same time. Customers attune to what they see once they see it, don't they? My wife bought a Golf recently. Now she thinks every third car is a Golf because now she's become her attention's gone to Golfs everywhere. The same number of Golfs on the road now there were 2 years ago. But so the customer sees crack and they conclude they are happening at the same time. That is a lintel failure, unfortunately, not covered. That is covered, and you could end up with elements of a valid claim have non-valid sections under the scope. And that's a tricky one to tackle with a customer. And you have to convince them because they're adamant that this damage isn't there. Here's a lintel failure in reality. Can you see it? Can you see the cracking on the left and the right. Never quite the same as the textbook, but not bad, is it? There's a step crack there, and there's a step crack just here. The first complaint you'll get on a lintel failure will be a bit of a complaint about the windows just catching and binding. I'm not saying it could be that, but that could be the first sign, okay? That's a little clue. We have instances where we've said lintel failure and then we've looked and there is no lintel. So it's not so much a failure as opposed to there isn't one.
I think on that as well, you see it in 60s type buildings as well where they replace PVC
Yeah.
from the metal, and a lot of times the metal window is designed to almost replace that.
Yeah. Well, we talk about that because I've got bay window replacement, which is what I've classed that as. So that's the lintel failure, and the next one, the one I'm going to show you is a bay window failure, and that was very common and still is, not. Unfortunately, it's still quite common, too common for me anyway. Roof spread. Do we know what roof spread is? I mean, these things are pretty much as they say on the tin, I guess. If I was trying to do the splits, my legs were those rafters, and it wouldn't be very nice, but I would have something holding my legs in, like a collar or even a ceiling joist. They hold those two rafter toes in. As soon as someone mucks around with the collars, or there's degradation on the joists, or we call it overloading, then guess what? These rafters want to go. And as soon as they go, you're going to get cracking up at high level. That's what you'll see. So when you go into these properties, you see some cracking at high level and not a lot else. And here are some examples. So on the right, you'll see that you might see the little bow on the flank wall. Yeah. And on the left, you can just see it as well. I just told the customer that it's not covered. I begged him to do that away as well because I wasn't sure what that was going to fall. So you can see how the structure is bowing. And he's adamant that, this is rotational downward movement in subsidence. And I said, there's no downward movement, it's all outward movement. Yeah, and that's the little deception that you've got to watch. I've got one here that you ought to look at. This is not typical of roof spread, but it is roof spread, but not typical. Can you see what's happened there? It's now a flat roof. So it was a pitched roof, and it's now flat. So just going back to that, can anyone guess why that's happened? Look at the age of the property. Sorry? No. Look at the age of the property and look at the neighbour's roof. It's a turn of the century property in London. They wouldn't have concrete interlocking tiles, would they? So what would the original roof be, do you think? Yeah. Slate, half the weight of concrete interlocking tiles. Double the cost. So, when they replace the slate roofs, they usually go in concrete interlocking tiles. Not mostly the most affluent areas of London. Why hasn't the neighbours collapsed then? Begs the question. No, it's the same sort of thing, but that's an interlocking tile as opposed to slate. But theirs has collapsed, so that was collapsed, and that one hasn't. Reason being that their roofer knew this was a heavier roof, and I'm going to go in there and spend about £300-400 strengthening the collars and joist up. That's all. That's all it took, £300-400. This chap on the left has got about £10,000-12,000 bill, minimum. Because obviously as it's gone down, the chimney, gallows bracket, everything's destroyed and all fallen through with the tank into the first floor. The first floor's all been destroyed as well. He was adamant that was down to those trees, by the way. But, and you feel sorry for them because there is zero cover for this. And the builder has long gone, you can imagine, over the horizon. Bay window replacement, so here we go. You might have inadequate windows, like you said, so you're replacing what they call strong windows. Could be timber sub-frame windows, metal frame windows with the UPVC. And UPVC can be weaker unless you've got steel reinforcement inside, yeah? They might not have supported the structure when they took the window out and you want in. You see, if in a normal window you've got a lintel, if you take the window out, fine, you've got a lintel there. You take the window out, go for a coffee, come back to the new window, it doesn't really matter. On a bay, you've got to be really careful because a bay by definition is a piece of construction outside the line of the normal construction of a wall. It's lightweight, it's to allow more light in, it's a lighter weight construction on a more shallow foundation. And so because there isn't a lintel support, there are sections of lintel, you have to support the structure in a different way. woefully inadequate for the kind of size that gave me. And they put that in. And lo and behold, she's got cracking on the apron wall inside here and on the other apron wall, and she's got cracking up at a higher level and into the gable. And I said, yes, great, but it's basically downward movement of that structure down to the replacement window. It's not the foundations, because this apron wall hasn't moved at all. Not one bit. Yeah? Solutions for that? You need to know, one is you've got to make sure the window size adequate, and two, then it's a waiting game. How much further are they going to go before they catch up with the gaps, close the gaps where they should have packed? It may go too far by the time it happens, if you don't know. I was going to now talk about, because I've talked about clay, and I've talked about other types of subsidence, I've talked about what is it. I was going to talk about how we prove it. That's the big game sometimes we have to play. We think we know what it is, but we might have to prove it. Do you know why we have to prove it sometimes? Because you're thinking, if I stand up on the side and I say that's definitely subsidence, so that tree out, no problem. Why am I standing there having to now go back and do some testing and proof around it? I knew the solicitor would come up with that. There could be subrogation, so recovery against someone. It could be that a customer is adamant, is hugging that tree, or a neighbour is, and we just need to probably provide some more detailed analysis. Right, so levels of investigation. Here is my simple trial hole, they call it. It is a little hole. We dig it at the back, or at the front, or wherever it is, close to where the damage is, or the point of movement is. We know it's not clay, we know there's no trees, so we think by the time of the damage, we think it's the drain. So what we do is we dig the hole, pour the water down, the rainwater into the hopper, to the hose pipe, and lo and behold, my trial hole's filling up. Shouldn't be. Should have gone into the gully and out into the rainwater system. So I know the gully's defective. Replace the gully, damage is minor, repair the house. Job done. Nice and easy. If only, eh? So, when we want to do more detailed investigations, we call, one of the things we do is a borehole. So through the bottom of the trial hole, we will hand auger down, and it is an auger. You can see it's a helical tip there, on a bar, and as you auger and rotate down, you gather the sample, and they're half-metre sections, and then you push the sample out and you bag them up. And you might bag them up and label them, and off to the laboratory. Okay? And here is a chap there just augering there. Can you see that? And as the auger's down, because as you rotate the auger, it drives down. So you pull it back up, and you get the samples out. They really struggle with desiccated clay. Can you know why? Do you know why they might struggle with that? Where's my sample of clay going?
It's hard.
Have a look at that. You try and auger through that. You try and auger through that. Very hard. So there's the perverse thing about this. The clay that we're really interested in, we struggle to investigate. So we end up having to do things like mechanical augers, which is this piece of equipment on the right, which takes, if you want, the elbow grease out of that one. But you don't really want to turn up on site and take that through someone's kitchen. So you need to make sure you've got access. Another system we use is window sampling, but it's all a mechanical way of driving an auger through to get the sample we need. We absolutely need to have that. I've got here some of the lab testing. So we do these things called, you're probably familiar with Atterberg tests. Are you familiar with that? We argue a lot about Atterberg tests, don't we? What we want to now do is say, right, we've got the samples, we know how to get the foundations, we know it's clay, or it's not, and we might have some roots, or we might not. But now we want to know, is that clay dry? Is it desiccated? Is it like that? So how do we prove it? So one of the methods is Atterberg test, and what they do is they do a thing called a liquid limit and a plastic limit to work out how shrinkable the clay is. This is how a grown man in a laboratory adds a bit of water, what looks like 2 butter mugs, to determine its liquid limit, at which point that clay turns to liquid. Why is that important? Because the other thing you want to do is then play with the clay in a different way to work out its plastic limit. These are BS standard tests, by the way. I know. And what they do, you take one number away from the other to tell you how shrinkable the clay is. And that's important, isn't it? Because if the clay is really shrinkable, guess what? It's going to be more liable to cause damage to building than a low shrinkable clay. Okay? Make sense? But the other thing we don't want to do is work out its moisture content, don't we? Because we don't want to know, right, where, if it's really shrinkable clay, and where is its moisture content in that? And we do this thing called 0.4 of that number there has got to be lower than its moisture content, or plus 2% of that number there is going to be lower than its moisture content. And this is where it gets crazy because it's such a crude test. And 0.4 is such a crude analogy of what they think desiccation is. Here's another one called soil suction. So that sample is actually from a soil suction test. It's just a sample I've taken. So what we're trying to do here is still determine how dry the clay is. So imagine on the I throw some water on the ground here, and I have a dry piece of sponge. I throw the dry piece of sponge on the water, sucks up the water, yeah? My wet sponge does have no suction on the water, yeah? Dry clay has high suction, just like the dry sponge did. So what I want to do, you remember those samples we got from the site that the chap was pushing out? They're like 2-inch diameter samples, or 1-inch diameter samples. We're going to now put them into what they call 100 samples. So we're going to actually bang them in back at the lab into 100 cakes, 100 millimeter cakes, each of these. We're going to slice them up. We're going to put a filter paper in them, and then we're going to wrap them up in cling film, and we're going to throw them into the oven for about 7 to 10 days. It sounds like a very cooking thing. Yeah. And then we're going to come back out again from the oven, and then we're going to open up the samples, and we're going to take the filter paper, and we're going to weigh it. Why am I going to weigh it? What on earth am I going to gain from that? Because there's a tug of war going on. That filter paper is blotting, isn't it? It's trying to suck. So is the clay sample. If the filter paper takes water, then the clay couldn't have been that dry. Yeah? If the filter paper took no water, then that clay's probably like that one there. So very finite measurements to determine how desiccated clay is. So I'm working out what they call my suction values, kilopascals that's measured in. Higher suction values, higher desiccation. And here's the fourth one, so I promise it's the last one I want to show you, this thing called odometers, or consolidation press. So bear with me, we've got the samples at different depths, but when I bring a sample in from 4 meters and up to ground level, and it's been down there about 20,000 years, what's the first thing it's going to do? Divers call it the bends. The first thing it's going to do is expand, isn't it? It's now not under that overburden pressure. That creates suction, that distorts readings if you're not careful. What we do with this one is we then counterweight it to the pressure it was back at 4 meters, 3 meters, 2, 1, and underside footing. The sample is sitting in there, by the way. We then add water. And if you throw water on it, it doesn't absorb. But if you add water to it, it will take water up. Samples that take lots of water, meaning they strained more, they must have been desiccated a lot. And these are all ways of telling us how dry is that clay. Is it dry enough? And have my legal colleagues got enough evidence there to persuade someone that you have got dry clay, we have got roots, there is a tree, the timing of damage is definitely related to the subsidence. Remove the tree, because it's a nuisance and it's a negligence. Yeah? We call it dirty videos. So the other thing we do, because the third parties might say, aha, but the drains are going to cause the damage. So and the drains do sometimes cause the damage, but usually they are a symptom of the damage, not the cause of the damage. So they're a symptom of the damage. And you might get things like this, which is basically roots in the drain. You know, sometimes people say your drains are leaking and they've attracted the roots. That's rubbish. Roots don't hunt out drains. They've got brains in them. Roots just go where they go, and where there's water, they proliferate. That's the agricultural term. They proliferate. And boy, has that proliferated. You might get just totally collapsed drains as you put the camera through, and that's fine. But you might even find some friends in the drain. And that's fine too. But these are all not caused by subsidence, but it's a secondary effect, and we have to eliminate that. Okay? Because third parties or neighbours will argue, that's the cause of damage, and you say, no, that's the defects we found. I've got dry clay. I haven't got wet clay, which is possibly what you're arguing, yeah? So we do all of that, and then we say, well, is the property moving? You know, how much movement have we got? And here's one system of monitoring we do. It's called crack monitoring. Have you come across that before? You've probably heard the term. We have this sort of thing. If any one of you got experts who are putting this sort of thing on, we need to change experts. Okay? Because that's old hat. It's only one-dimensional. This is probably better. They're called digital calipers on what they call DMEX studs. So now you're measuring movements in two directions and very, very accurately to the 100th millimetre. We sometimes use these remote devices as well. These are electrosensor devices, and we've got about 50 of these deployed out there. Still tested and corroborated, but it's good. Non-intrusive in some sense, in that we're not knocking on the policy holder every 2 months to take a reading. These are giving us readings every day, remotely through the Simcon. Yeah? Very low tech, but it's telling me degree and direction of movement. Because I may have proved it's a tree by the roots and the clay, and I've told them it's not the drain, but if they say, but is it moving, I need to show it's moving. So this is all the evidence, the package of evidence we might need because of this. If we have, we might accuse some people of being tree huggers, and guess what? They accuse us of being, deforesting parts of London, I guess. There's lots of papers on this recently. Less than 5% of trees have been cut due to subsidence. Most are down to decay, maintenance cycles, and other developments. Okay, but it's synonymous. It's just a very emotive subject when you try and take a tree down. First thing we want to do is appoint an arborist. Say no, it's an expert. Say it is a tree. We need to know if it's a particular conservation area. Do you know why that's important? Why would that be important? Yeah, because there's a fine. Yeah, quite literally, there's a fine. But you don't want to attract a fine. You don't want to pay the £2,000 fine and take a tree down. You just don't want to do that. So with that, we need to do application. It's not like a planning application. But if you're going to apply to get the tree down, yeah, good question. You need to have evidence, don't you? Yeah. So what's the evidence you need? The roots, the sample of clay. You're going to need monitoring, aren't you? So I come and see your house, and you tell me there's a TPO or it's a conservation area. I can't even apply to take the tree down for possibly another year. Yeah, think about it. And then they come back after that year of monitoring, which has demonstrated it's that tree. They come back and they decline it because we are hoping that in that year we are going to get a good season of dry weather, yeah, to give us the help that we need on the cyclical to demonstrate the tree. But if we don't get that really nice sort of seasonal pattern, and guess what? The last 2 years it's been bizarre weather. We haven't had the seasonal pattern really. The evidence has been great sometimes. We then put the application in because everyone's made bananas. They then decline. We can lodge an appeal. We have 6 to 8 weeks, I believe, for an appeal. But the appeal might go to Secretary of State. But in that time, we might gather more evidence, and we might see the property just deteriorate further. So a lot goes on just to get the tree out. But that's the right remedy. Think about it. Yeah, I'll give you an example of how levelling works. So this is October, and if you didn't know, although damage might be discovered in August, in July, and September, damage is usually at its worst in October. After October, you will start seeing a reversal of fortunes. Okay? So you need to sort of hang fire till then. And here's the proof. The levelling, the property was at its lowest point in October, and then it started to recover. We said it's an oak tree. We ended up removing all the other trees because the oak owner didn't want it to know. It then subsided again. It then started to recover, and we said it's the oak tree, and the oak owner didn't want to know. You can see where we're going with this, can't you? We then put him on notice. Eventually, look what happened. He took the tree out. So what do you think happened after that? Yeah. Good. Great point. Heave, yeah. Recovery is good. Heave is too much recovery. Yeah? So recovery is good. Yeah, so too much, which is that heave. But the house was at the age of the tree. So no risk of heave. Yeah? And I can tell you right now, of about the 20,000, 30,000 subsidence claims I've seen over my years, only one is a subsidence claim which has turned to heave because we took a tree out. Now, the insurer's in the game of risk, that's a risk worth taking. Yeah? That's what's happened though. So we say, right, tree's out, let's repair it. You've got to be kidding me. We're not going to repair that yet. Look, it's recovering. It's recovering the following October. It finally started to dissipate just around here. And we were able to repair. So look, October, 4.5 years down. Look, guess what? We've got the right solution. You know, if you've got someone, if I talk in medical terms, if you've got someone who's got cancer, you can either amputate bits of their cancer, or you can just perform euthanasia. But I'd just rather you try and treat patient properly, because it won't come back. Yeah. So in this case here, we could have gone and underpinned it, we could have gone and rebuilt it, we could have done root barriers, but you're better off removing the cause at its very, very source, which is what you need to be advocating. Yeah. These are sort of things we get. So we might do other sort of distortion service. That's a level survey. Here is another type of service called a line service, a plumb bob survey, to tell us what's out and what's in, because we can eliminate restraint problems as well. Yeah. We do this thing because we sometimes do investigations, but we know damn well what's down there. We've got a catalogue of about 20,000 to 30,000 investigations in there. So when we are digging a hole just to find out if it's clay and how deep the clay is, we are nuts. Because in Crawford's, I know, we probably dug a hole next door, 3 doors down this way, and 4 doors down that way, and across the street this way. And geologically, nothing's changed in the last 20 years. So what we have done is we've modelled that all into a database. And you can put in the postcode, and it will come up with the profile of clay you've got. And it's called VISCAM, which is just an acronym for Virtual Investigation, saves cost and time. If someone wants to know what type of tree it is and what type of mineral type of clay, you just plug that in. And rather than waiting 3 to 6 months for lab testing, soil testing, we can just get that within the estimate. How should we fix it? So we've got all of this going on. We've determined the cause. We're trying to remove the cause. And if we're successfully removing the cause, what's our fix? Yeah, perfect. Cosmetic repair. Before I go there, though, how often do you think we end up with underpinning? How often do you think we end up with cosmetic repair? Superstructure? Which one? Do you reckon 10 for underpinning? Anyone want to beg to differ or agree? 10%? Nearly always underpinning? Okay, yeah. Wow. 3 to 5%. Wow. Yeah. If you'd asked me this about 30 years ago, I think we're looking at about 50% underpinning. Horrendous, because we still see those cases coming up. Guess what? They've underpinned bits badly, not to the right depth. And guess what? The tree's still there. Another tree's there now. So haven't got rid of the problems. Superstructure 90%, and so you're looking at DMV, which we call major cash settlements. So if you've got a big landslip solution feature, it could be diminishing market value with major cash settlements. In this sort of settlement, we could do cash and repairs mixed, but it tends to be a lot of repairs. But very little. And that's good if you're doing that, because you get the right solutions. Cosmetic repairs, what do we mean by that? We might mean strengthen the masonry, we might mean repair the cracks, but we're actually just talking about afterwards decorating. Because if we've stabilised the house, there's nothing to worry about. You don't gain anywhere. You can put in some spectacular things like helibars, and here I've got one here. It's about the only things I can carry in the tube. I'm not really ready. That's a helibar. I didn't want to carry the auger around with me. It's basically a helical steel bar, and it's grouted in at this section and that section in a bed joint of brickwork. It's a bit like a windscreen. So if you had a windscreen crack, the crack will travel and could be a weak spot, even though the windscreen isn't constantly being peppered, because it's a weak spot. So with reinforcements, you are just eliminating weak spots. Helibars are used, but they've got to be used conservatively in the right places, okay? So we are cautious where we use them, and we design them in when they're right. Contractors love them, by the way. Do you know why they like them? Yeah, have you seen the rates?
Yeah.
Here's another one. Epoxy resin repair, or resinous repair. Have you heard of that? Yeah? It's basically glue for men. And here's an example of the resin. It is like rock. And you will put it in, and you can join bricks together like amazing. And I'll smash that over something, and guess what? It will not break my glue section. It will break somewhere else. Now, when you build a panel of brickwork, they teach you that your mortar has to be marginally weaker than your brick in terms of strength. Do you know why? Exactly. So when you get any movement, thermal or whatever, it's the mortar that cracks, not the brick. If your mortar is too strong, you have too much cement in the mix, it will crack the brick and the brick. So you get it crack through, which is not nice, not easy to repair. That is just a disaster. we went with the English heritage. The thing to do, if the property is stable, let's face it, you just put in a sort of good cementitious grout repair. That's all you need to do. Because if it's going to subside, glue ain't going to hold it together. It's going to go. It's just going to go in a different place. That's all. Yeah.
Alarming is that Epoxy resin they start using the dentist.
Glue back onto it.
Yeah.
Fix the tropic type of solution. So okay, this is bad news now. For me, if we start talking about foundation strengthening, we've sort of lost the battle. In that we really failed. We didn't do what we ought to have done to stabilise by natural means. And there are times when all bets are off. You just can't do it. So I'm going to talk about mass concrete, or what they call traditional, pattern beam, pilot beam, pile draft, and I'm talking about grafting, that's drafting, grouting. Mass concrete is the sort of stuff you saw around the 70s and 80s, and you still see it now. Pile draft is your Rolls Royce solution, I'll go through those. Grouting is another solution which we use for just filling in gaps, okay? So here's your mass concrete. So I've got a house, it's subsided, I need to underpin it. I don't go and just dig a whole area, do I, and underpin it because the house is not covered. So I do it in sections. Yeah? And the sections are going to be very strategic in that if I do the number ones on one day, I don't do number two. Sorry, I don't do number 5 the next day, which is next to number 1. Because as soon as I dig down to number 5, number 1 is still setting. And this is how you dig down. It's 1 metre section. Because if you take 1 metre out, on brickwork, the brickwork self-supports, you don't even need to say. Any wider, and suddenly you've got things falling into the hole. So you dig down, and you hand dig, or you might use a mini digger. You excavate an area, and you create a shape under the house, a vertical shape like this, and like so, and then you put a timber shutter this side, and then you leave a little gap there, and then you pour concrete in, and then you dry pack, and you let it set, and then you move to another section, and then you come back, and eventually the house will be underpinned. Imagine if you had to go deeper than about, say, 2 metres, metre and a half, 2 metres, what you're looking at. If I had to go down to here, I wouldn't be digging like this, would I? I'd be digging, my excavation would start from the back here, to get down there, wouldn't it? So I'm moving all of this material, and imagine digging through that sort of crack. Disaster. A lot of material, and I've got to get rid of it somewhere as well. So it's a mess, it's very expensive, and it's dangerous. So as you go to depth, you need to come up with other solutions. Here is in life now, you could see it. So there's the original foundation. And actually, funny enough, you can see a crack there. And here's the new foundation. Can you see it looks very smooth? That's the print of my timber shutter against which it was cast. Yeah. There's a better photo of it there, I think. Yeah, there you go. Just there. You can see the crack in the foundation as well. It's gone all the way through. And can you see these white bits here? These are my levelling points for how I level the building. So I want to go a bit deeper, or I've got an obstruction, so I can't go all the way through. I've got a drain, or I've got something else happening under the structure. I might do what they call a pad and beam. So it's the same sort of thing, but I'm connecting the beam, so the pads with a beam. Yeah. And sometimes I might take the foundation out and put the beam in, or I might just put it above the beam. Whatever works. Same sort of thing. And here is a pad and beam under a bay, actually. So it's a bit bizarre when you think about it, because there's the bay supported by a beam, and there's the pad. So it looks like this is all just floating, but the pad's over there. And inside we would cast, so on the flank wall, you would cast your pads, then you put your sacrificial stools in. Can you see them? They're just there under the reinforcement. And that's supporting the house. And you can just see them there, the sacrificial stool there. That's under the bay, by the way, inside someone's lounge. Obviously not a lounge anymore. And this is in the hallway. And what you do is you cast the beam. You then, once it's cast, you cut stools, sacrificial stools. They just stay there. And then you dry pack. Right? And you go through a system, because obviously my ideal work, I want to lift the house up, I want to put foundations in, I want to drop the house back down again, but that's not that. So I end up having to do it through a very sort of process that when I get from A to Z, by the time I get to Z, I have got a house on the foundation. But you can see we've destroyed the house. Yeah? Look at the hallway. That's the staircase, by the way. So it's not pleasant. And here's a pylon beam. So we are now going deeper. So we're saying this tree and its influences are about 4, 5, 6, 7 metres. Or there are other problems, peat, for instance. We need to pile, we need to go deep. Piles will go down to 20 Can you see the piles? They're all cast. Can you see the reinforcing bars sticking up? This is someone's kitchen, by the way. Kitchen and lounge, I think it was. You can imagine that. And you can see the pads on the outside supporting the wall until we get this. Can you see the reinforcing bars here? We're just going to continue the reinforcement, and we're going to bend the bars down the piles, connect them all, and then nib it into the pads at the side, and then cast the concrete. And then we will separate. Yeah? Okay? Here's another one. This is an interesting one. Well, it doesn't look interesting there, does it? But it's interesting in that I've picked these out. Can you see something around the piles? What's this here I've got? It's like a... Yeah, if you want to call it that, a pipe, or we might call it a sleeve. But more, it is a pipe, I guess. Why don't you think we put a pipe there? When you pipe, Jesus, why would we want to do that? Well, the concrete's already cast. It does do the concrete casting for you, but it was in the ground anyway with the organ. And now we've got a sleeve. So in this scenario, this will happen quite often. We are piling because we couldn't get the tree out, maybe, or trees. So trees last forever, don't they? No, they don't. They all have a life cycle. They could come down in a storm, they could be diseased, they could just take them out. When that tree does come out, we could potentially get some recovery off the ground. If that ground recovers, it could lift my piles up. So I need that ground to slip by a sleeve. The pile has got a loading at much deeper depth. So when the ground swells, it just slides past. Yeah? So we end up, unusually with the pile draft situation, where we dig down into the ground a bit further and leave a nice void, so that when it recovers, you've got a nice gap to play with there. Does that make sense? So it's called an anti-heave precaution. Here's another one. This one is just interesting because I did say to the customer, you need to move out, and we're arguing with it, because I think they said, can we just use the kitchen and use 2 rooms? And I was trying to explain to you, I mean, that's their kitchen, by the way. And they said, well, can we just live upstairs? And look, the staircase is gone, so get out. And I think they said, well, we'll leave some storage material upstairs they don't need. I thought, fine, as long as you don't need it for 4 to 6 months, you can leave it there. Otherwise, take your storage and take it to your AA, your accommodation. They didn't quite get that. But they then came back and said, well, we have left some things there, can we take it out? I said, not really. Can't do it. But we've wrecked the place. And you end up taking everything off. Skirtings, architraves, all of it, a whole lot, boiler, everything has to go. Yeah, and everything else is protected, which can't be gone, you know, until you've done the foundation. So we don't enter it lightly. And here is, oh God, here is grouting. So if we have a gap in the ground, we grout it, we fill it with this. This would be like a Eurotech system, maybe. It's like a high pressure foam, high density foam, sorry. And as you push it into the ground, it just lifts the ground, which is fine if you've got a void. And so you put a theodolite there, just to make sure that as soon as it's made contact and started pushing the ground, stop. Yeah? So you don't overcook it. I was going to talk about how you guys can help, how brokers can help. Okay? So, right, we're going to talk about fact and not anecdote, not myth, and not what people say. We're going to talk about what actually happens, okay? So I want to say what we found and what we know. So one of the things that we often get with customers is that they've been told, oh, insurance is going to deal with it. Now you know, not always. So you've got to be best prepared, because 60% are not covered under the policy. And even when they are, there's elements of that that might come. So you need to just brace yourself and make sure that, you know, we're aligned. They say, or they think, that underpinning is a solution, because Resin Pub said that, or, you know, that's what they've heard, and that's what Sarah Beanie says on her TV program about your house has got cracks. We have these things called beanie canes, you know that? So when Sarah Beanie has that program, the next, usually takes 2 or 3 days, the beanie canes come through. I watched it on TV, and I think I got the same thing from your investigation. So we actually have a little joke inside. Is that a beanie cane or is that a holiday cane? How best to fix it? Well, no, underpinning is very rare. In fact, an underpinning disaster, really. It doesn't need it. Why would you give chemotherapy to someone who's got a rash? You know? Let's not overkill it. Let's do the right treatment. Trees and drains, heave damage. We often don't see it. Not there. Doesn't happen. Best solution, take the cores out. Tree or drain, let's hit it. And it might take time to get the right solution, but they've got to bear with us while we have a good old fight with them about it. And to the customer, it'll feel like we're not doing anything because the site's there, the cracks are still there. How long will it take? Well, they've had a claim, haven't they? They've all had a claim, and they all think it will take a few weeks. And the last claim they had took a few weeks. Might have been escape of water, chip pan fire, a few months. Subsidence could be a long haul. But it's their major asset, and we've got to make sure we've got to deal with it properly. Because I don't want to go back to subsidence. Can take a long time, like I've already shown you. Because you've got multiple third parties, TPOs, conservation areas, local authority drains. You might need to have evidence. Under the green book requirement for TPO, you need to have levelling. Minimum to show seasonal limit, 12 months, possibly more. You then need to go through quite a few hoops and hurdles just to do repair schemes, believe it or not. You've got party walls, CDM, you might have asbestos-containing materials, building construction plans, planning permission, building regulations. So there's a lot to go through just so you can get started. So there's a lot of work involved. It's going to bear with us. Yeah? And that almost, I think, brings me to it. So with subsidence, I would say don't do what this bloke do. Don't ignore the problem, but understand it. Understand the problem, and be aligned to what an adjuster might be doing on a subs claim. Because it is simple once you know that. Have you got any questions? Or should we talk about delegate authority now? Any questions? Yeah, far away.
I just wanted to understand how solid putting someone, their neighbour, on notice is in terms of passing or terminating the loss.
There's a thing called a tree root agreement. So you're talking about private neighbour, yeah?
Yeah, private neighbour or possibly block of flats, residential management, something like that.
Okay, it's about foreseeability. So how foreseeable is it? I mean, we've got a BLM, we've got a solicitor from BLM who we work with, so it's quite good. Yeah, well, we have we got two, sorry, notice, yeah. Basically, it's all about foreseeability, but if they have no foreseeability, all you can do is put them on notice, but you have to tell them what the risk is, what the damage is, and ask them to take those steps now. Yeah? If they don't take those steps, they haven't really got any protection under the tree agreement, and you get basically all bets are off, you go for them. Yeah? You do have to find out the nature of that third party also. It's worth doing that. So when you say block of flats management, it's always worth knowing who maintains the trees, what do they know, what have they been doing, and then and the best way to do substance claim is get them on board and cajole them into getting those trees out, one way or another, even if it means perhaps funding some of it. But if there's a recovery, which is different, we don't want to prejudice the recovery position, because we may have a right to recover some of the damage, the monies for some of the damage against them. So that's not the same thing as getting the mitigation done. But one can help the other. Yeah? I know it's a long answer. Any other questions? Yeah. Cool.
When you mentioned about removal of trees
Yeah.
or mitigation
Yeah.
or damage, you mentioned about the tree being the same age as the property, so one could see what's the concern?
So when you build a house on a virgin site, and the site as it is there. Yeah? But if you said, I'm going to build this house here, but I've got an oak tree there that's a good 80 years old. I'm going to build a house that has foundations designed for that oak vine. So the house then grows old, the oak gets a bit bigger, but when you remove the oak, the house foundation is now not in the condition, the site is not in the condition it was when the house foundations were designed, because now the site is without the oak. Yeah? So imagine another situation where the house and the tree are planted, the house is built and the tree is planted at the same time. Then they're both growing high, and the house is built in virgin site, that's fine. But if a tree predates the house, all you're doing is you're changing the conditions of the site to the state that the house was never designed for, and that can cause leaks. Really, not straightforward. I'm trying to think of another way, a better way of putting it actually. It is designing that house with the tree in mind. But if you built a house and there were no trees, then you can remove the tree. Yeah?
So regardless of the tree, you find the most aggressive tree, but we can do a tree next to your house at the same time as building a house.
Yeah.
So that's going to escalate. So
Of course it is. Yeah.
take
Correct. It can only, it can never overhydrate. Yeah, absolutely.
So how would you deal with the situation where the tree is older?
So if it's older, we do a heave analysis, right? So we will do an assessment to say, okay, it is older, but what is our heave risk? And we work out the actual heave analysis, and we say, right, the heave potentially is 80 millimetres, fine, take the tree out. Or we say, right, the heave says there's too much, the heave analysis says, oh, it's going to heave too much, we might need to stabilise part of foundations. Yeah? Or if the tree can't be trimmed, or if we can't put a barrier in, or do something else, we might stabilise the house.
So that's why you do the pollard then?
Yeah.
You still do that?
Yeah, we do. The councils do pollarding, we don't. You just drive around, you can see them. They're like disfigured telephone poles, aren't they? Pollarding is just a very aggressive maintenance which will create lots of regrowth. And researchers said pollarding doesn't do anything except stop the tree function for that season. It'll come back next year, and look at the tree 3 years on. It's very aggressive. It looks like a disfigured muppet, But its leaf area, is proportional to the amount of moisture it's taken. Portlink is probably the research that's been going on now, and they are pretty much concluding if a tree is causing the damage. People have said, can you take the tree down in stages? Rubbish. Taking the tree out, you can actually have the recovery slow or quick. Doesn't really matter. One of the things we do though is when we take a tree out, we put ground rehydration in. So rather than waiting, we say, well, we want to wait for rainfall, or we could beg for rainfall. Why don't we put some perforated tubes in and irrigate the ground very gradually to imitate that, to allow that recovery, that one monitoring we saw going on for long, happen a bit quicker. Yeah. And you had a question, didn't you?
Understood. Proactively, there are models out there, so BGS, Crawford, so we look at light rounds,
A landmark, yeah.
Yeah. Everything you just said, how accurate is what they're doing for your work? Is it better? Is it the best available? What would you like to see?
Yeah, and we provide some of our data to some of these authorities as well, because I know they've got the boreholes. Do you talk about drift geology, the soil geology? Yeah.
That's it for soil type as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. If we suspect it's landfill, we can see the type of soil, or we think it's clay, we can see it's clay, we're pretty much home and dry. But if we want to subrogate, or we want to mitigate and produce evidence to mitigate, so it's not a homeowner, then I think we have actually first level evidence demonstrate it is what we think the map say it is. Otherwise, it's got a repudiation. So, on other claims, on customers' own trees, it's fine. I think some areas are fine, some areas are working rubbish, I have to say. So it is mixed, but generally it's fine in the urban areas.
The follow-up question, they talked about, we still do this kind of subsidence devastation in the southeast of England that keeps on coming up. I didn't know whether or not that was based purely on high-level analysis of BGS soil type, or whether or not there's something that
There are two things happening, isn't there? There are two things. One is most of the highly shrinkable clay, that stuff, is in the southeast. Most people live in the southeast. And that's it, really. So, unfortunately, if most of the clay was in the north, we wouldn't have this problem, but it was not. Most of the highly shrinkable, London clay is one of the highly shrinkable clays, is in the southeast. And we've got probably the biggest urban green areas as well. Big Victorian buildings, shallow foundations, nice big planting regimes by councils. The other thing we've got, which we haven't seen, is we've got austerity measures in. Councils are not pruning on 2-3 year cycles as they should be. They're extending cycles out of it. And so if this weather should continue any further into August, anything like this, we could be in for quite a busy time. And the last busy time we had was probably 2005, 2006. Proper busy time was 2003. And this would become, that room would become empty, and this room would have been full. But any more questions? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering, with tree removal, what was the kind of typical average size clay?
Do you mean value-wise?
Not
or-
value-wise, I'm guessing it would be quite modest if you can remove the tree.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. So an average spend on a claim where you remove a tree, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, you're looking at about, this is cosmetic repairs.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a range of between 5 and 10,000. Yeah. Average for an underpinning?
Yeah.
Well, let's have a look. It could be 25, 30. It could be a couple of 100,000, a couple of million. And the biggest one we've done one of the biggest in the UK that I did was in Bayswater. It was a hotel on the district line. Council plane treat, which was 6.3 million. We don't like to see too many of those, but most of them are going to be in the, I would say, 50 to 150,000 pounds roughly.
That creates even bigger cost.
So, yes, and when it does that, we do a DMV, we might do that. So we have that, we have situations. I had some of the landslip claims which are really interesting, but I thought, oh, we want to talk about that, where there's a hotel that went over into the sea. It's coastal erosion, but the hotel went. And we just did a DMV. We diminished the market value. So we worked out the market value of the going concern, and it was a business. Yeah, we just said, what's the point? To stabilise that would have cost 2 or 3 million. Yes, no. To replace the hotel was about 1.2 million. Yeah, to buy another business for them, sorry. Yeah, which is what we did. So yeah, often on the major losses, DMV. Yeah. And we've done that a few times. But yeah. Yeah.
Partial underpinning, we've got different assessment. Tricky one, but as an underwriter, they're very nervous about writing partial underpinning.
So my question, if I was an underwriter, why is that partial? My question. What big have you done, and why have you stopped where you stopped? It was a tree. How big is that tree? Because that's all it'll be. The worst ones for you are going to be, we've underpinned it, and I've got that, and I'll probably be honest, we've got people, celebrities, we've got people very high profile who are banging their fist down, they want it underpinned. Guess what? The house is not moving, and the tree's out. It's in Hampstead Garden Suffolk. The tree is out, it's not moving, we're going to underpin it. And when that is assessed, you know, you ask the question, why have you underpinned it? Commercial decision, pressure, you know, is in the media, in the high-profile media. So I haven't got logic, but my first question would be, why have you done partial underpinning? Correct. What you need to get to, what was the cause? Yeah. What stopped you from dealing with the cause? That's the thing. You know? So, any other questions? So one more, yeah.
Obviously, we're getting a lot more modern methods of constructing things like timber frame. And obviously, a lot more examples were brick. Do you see that as changing construction society?
The pattern of damage is not that dissimilar. It doesn't manifest directly at the point it should. It manifests at the point at the edge of the panel. So timber frame and steel frame buildings as well we get, and some of these very modern grand designs as well, very unusual. You will find that the damage is going to happen, but it just manifests in slightly a different area based on the panels and the structure. So timber frame is a classic example. You're going to get movement of the joints, you get rotation of the panels, but you still got fundamentally the same problem. You have a cause, you have downward movement, and you have foundations moving down.
You would have thought it'd be the last time.
Yeah, but the weight of the building won't determine if the foundations move down, it's because the site has moved down, irrespective of the weight. Yeah, so it might have a lighter weight foundation,